Another great episode of The Curse. This one's episode 9, Young Hearts. Yeah, the penultimate episode. Things are heating up to a boiling point, especially by the end of this one. I would say it's definitely a milestone for the Asher Whitney relationship here in this episode. Um, we definitely got to see uh, all the simmering anticipation and worries that Asher had all like built up and pop at the end of this episode. Whitney pretty much kind of like wanting to almost sabotage her relationship with Asher um, is on full display at the end here, and she's like emotionally distraught and and it's quite interesting and ambiguous about how she's feeling at the end here. But we do get like some fun scenes of them bowling, getting closer. Is Whitney kind of like in a way she's kind of like wanting to like maybe show that yeah she wants to move on from this relationship. At the same time, she's kind of going with the flow with what the show needs. So maybe at a certain point she's still kind of like falling back in infatuation with Asher for a second maybe, but maybe not. It's a bit interesting. We definitely get a lot. We get a resolution a little bit to the what we see here in the scene here, Bill's and Asher's friendship here. Um, in that bowling scene, we get to see more of Whitney's relationship with her parents and how she's and in her relationship with the apartments, the bookend apartments, and she has, even though she says she has nothing to do with it, seems that perhaps she does have some presence there because the housekeeper I think notices her there and recognizes her, the groundskeeper, um, and a lot of interesting developments here. We got to see a little preview of the episode of the now titled Green Queen. It would seem the HGTV producer executive came by and really clarified what they're looking for with this show, with the type of show they want. A little bit of friction there with Whitney and the executive there at that dinner scene. Lot of good stuff. Definitely building up to a very interesting finale. Right, we got all the pieces set, and where is Whitney and Asher's relationship gonna go from here? Are they gonna deliver the show how the HGTV wants it? Are they gonna maybe incorporate something something else, something different, something more real to the relationship they have? Is Doug gonna have more input in how it comes out? It seems like they're all like kind of settling in on the idea like, okay, we're just gonna do what HGTV wants, right? But behind the scenes, it's definitely affecting the real lives of both Asher and Whitney, but also the community at large, and and what does it all mean? That's all coming to a head, uh, I guess, in the finale next week. But let's get into the breakdown of episode 9 and really get into the nitty gritty, as they say. Nitty gritty. Put on that spoiler tag. All right, so basically, we start off in a very interesting perspective here from inside this car parked in front of Whitney and Asher's green home. And reminiscent of a lot of the shots we've seen in the series thus far, but this one is a lot more, I guess, a lot more aggressive in the sense that it really feels like there's someone following Whitney or spying on her. Like it's the most clear that someone is perhaps voyeuristically, or perhaps spying on this Asher and Whitney, and maybe even, could it be a private investigator? Could it be a journalist? Could it be someone on Dougie's team of the crew, a crew member, perhaps trying to add some extra spice to the show, maybe working behind the scenes on doing a side project related to the series or something. Could it be, as we discussed before, maybe Asher? This crazy theory, Asher has some kind of person or himself filming extra scenes to improve, as we've seen, to improve his relationship, to improve how he can become, to improve his standing as a husband to Whitney, and become a better husband, right? That's his idea, his goal. Perhaps we've seen him, take notes and trying to improve recording conversations, etc. Or is it just another part of the aesthetic of the show? Blurring the lines between fact and fiction, between reality TV style filmmaking, documentary style, blending all those together. The thing is that this is, like I said, this is like the most overtly POV shot we've seen thus far. We actually see someone's hand on the steering wheel here. Typically we see maybe a camera from in a car or something, behind a window, through a fence or something, but we never really see an actual person's hand or anything. Could be, I guess, another person in the crew, perhaps going to set, but why would they be at Whitney's house? I don't know. It's interesting. It's not really addressed in this episode. Perhaps it will be in the finale. Again, it could just be an extreme version of their aesthetic, of their documentary style aesthetic. But now we're here at the set. We're shooting some more scenes with the couple who's supposedly buying the house, which was just a fake house buyers, but real couple. Doing this funny gag for the HDTV executive here. Dougie's showing off, like, oh, look, we have look at this great show we're making, and it's pretty funny, isn't it? And it's, although this joke of like trying on the jeans are too tight, is kind of like banal and like kind of silly, typical safe comedy you would find on network TV, on HDTV type of shows. Certainly will please this executive. But Dougie's playing it up like, yeah, this is the type of show we're making, and trying to please her as much as he can, because he does at this point want to keep the job. And it seems that, like, he has been doing some experimental stuff, prodding at Asher and Whitney, in interviews, to get some spicy drama going on, and perhaps he does want to try to incorporate some of that as much as he can, but it does seem like he's caving and really just trying to make the show palatable to the network and the audience, than what they expect from shows like this, right? And perhaps that's just this whole series is in a way a commentary on that, on like how maybe artists try to do something fun and interesting, or something more insightful or thoughtful when it comes to creating shows, art, entertainment, movies, etc. But have to do so under the pressures of corporate, commercialized, commodified TV and network shows, and have to compromise or completely just churn out fodder for them instead of actually making anything meaningful or worthwhile, really, right? It's just popcorn entertainment at certain points. and and that's how perhaps he feels like, okay, that's just how I'm gonna have to survive, uh, and make do in this way to make survive in this industry. And perhaps that's part of the certainly part of the commentary of the show, right? Trying to uh, delve into that aspect of TV making. And here Whitney's basically uh, coming on set, and she's like, "Hey, let's do something funny with Asher." She mentions how he was acting a tough guy in the previous episode, right? When Fernando came by with the guns and scaring them, threatening them. She's called it pathetic what Asher did, standing up, thinking he was being all tough when he didn't take it as seriously that Fernando would do anything. Um, and then, but Dougie here is pretty much saying like, "Oh, the HDTV exec came by and we're gonna have to like, cut some things um, and kind of like bringing Whitney down to earth a little bit on what the show is going to be on from now on, right? What the show's going to be about." And then Asher comes by. He seems very distant, right? And like, is this his? He's definitely feeling like maybe he's feeling more distant from Whitney. Um, Maybe he's a bit nervous, a bit like apprehensive about doing more of the show, thinking about his interview with Dougie earlier and how that made him feel uncomfortable. Um, and so he just goes to the coffee shop, right? Whitney's worried that Fernando would be there, and Asher's dismissive, like, "Oh, what does it matter if he's there? Like, he's supposed to be our friend. We're supposed to like be helping him." While Whitney's still kind of like, she's like, "Oh well, he can be he's disposable." She feels like at this point she doesn't really want to like commit to that idea of like helping him out anymore because of how he was threatening earlier in previous episode, coming by with his posse. So there's that divide there between Whitney and Asher now. Like Asher trying to like be the good guy in this relationship. And then we have a PA coming by to tell Whitney about an incident with one of the other crew members who left a sign on Whitney's car that said "slumlord" on it. Because he found out that she is related to, or her parents are the slumlords of those bookend apartments. And apparently one of the drivers' uncle was evicted, and so he was upset about that. And Whitney, of course, is like, "Oh no, that's nothing to do with me." She's trying to make it clear that like she's completely a different person than her parents, and she has no actual ties to them and what they're doing, really. Like, she's not part of that. Even kind of like trying to make sure that this crew member here, this PA, doesn't agree with that guy, right? She's like, "You don't believe him, do you?" Which is a bit kind of like a threatening, aggressive tone she has on there, which is like, she asks her like, "You don't believe I'm a slumlord, right?" Which of course the power dynamic here is not balanced, so she of course will probably feel compelled to agree with Whitney because she wants to maintain the relationship, right, with her and keep this job, even though Whitney's saying like she doesn't want to fire that dude. There's still that like underlying pressure to kind of like not speak out, even though Whitney's like, "Oh yeah, free speech, etc., etc." This assistant knows like, "Oh shit, I just better keep my mouth shut, better for my career here, perhaps." and then Whitney finds out, oh, it's this Phoebe who told the guy about the eviction. She remembers her, like, oh yeah, she was a driver. She has this conversation with her, and Phoebe seems pretty on she seems like on Whitney's side here, right? She's sympathizing with Whitney, and had no idea the connection of her parents, and she doesn't really want to get in trouble. Whitney kind of assures her that she's fine, and the key moment here is that Phoebe pretty much says that, like, she one of the reasons why she probably looks up to Whitney is because Whitney, when at some point, when Phoebe was driving her to set or wherever, Whitney was like, oh, like, it's cool that you're a driver, and there's few women drivers, and like, keep doing it or something. And she's like, oh, keep at it, girl, or something like that, right? Some, like, most motivational small talk, really, that Whitney didn't even remember until Phoebe brought it up. But it meant a lot to Phoebe, right? But this just goes to show, like, the limitations of representation, right? Within, whether it's in entertainment or the workforce in general. That it's great that, like, marginalized people, whether through gender or race, are getting opportunities to work in roles or in positions that have often been just given to white men, right? But at the same time, that's not quite enough, to make a difference. It needs to be these people, it should be where, like, women should have more control, be more in power positions as well, and not solely as servants or lower positions compared to someone like Whitney, right? Who's like the white woman lead of the show, right? And that, within we can go even, like, more politically, like, in the terms of capitalism in general, like, representation is great, but it doesn't really change the underlying system and the hierarchy of power and the class divide. It doesn't really affect that. There's still going to be an oppressed class, and you could have a girl boss, that HDTV executive who's a woman at the top there, but she's still interested more in pleasing the middle class viewers of the show, and not so much interested in the holistic approach Whitney supposedly wants, of making the show be a benefit to the community, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not so interested in as we'll see later in the dinner scene, not so interested in the environmental aspect as much as just making a lighthearted, fun show for people to just binge, and not really concerned with the real world consequences, et cetera, et cetera. So we have Whitney here. Now, of course, she's, like, got it in her head, like, oh shit, like, people are realizing my connections with my parents more. Even people on the crew here. I gotta see what comes up when I look up my name. Previously, I think she mentioned that looking up her name on Google would reveal nothing connected to her parents, and she's scared that that's gonna come up now. She looks it up, and she actually looks up Whitney Rhodes, which I believe is her birth name, right? Or I guess she took Asher's name, Siegel's Asher's name. But she looks up Whitney Rhodes, And we see an article here from the Santa Fe Reporter reporting on the slumlords of Santa Fe, her parents, and the living conditions. It's like a hell on earth, it says. People living there. And she actually finds a picture of her holding up what seems to be like a grand opening sign to those apartments. So even though she says she had nothing to do with these apartments or her parents' business, or the working as a landlord, etc., for these apartments, she in fact, there's proof here that she was involved. She was involved enough to like be in this picture, smiling, for the paper, like, oh look, we have this affordable housing apartments, and she's part of it. She's like along there with her parents. And as we see later, even the groundskeeper recognizes her. Like, it seems that she, at least at some point, did work with them, with her parents, and at least was around enough for some tenants and people to actually have recognized her, and the people who work, for the building, to recognize her. So she is omitting some truths here. She has admitted some truths in the past regarding her connections to those apartments, and she's definitely insecure about it, and definitely wants to distance herself, as we see in the show, as much as possible. So she goes back to Asher, and what now we have, they're trying to, I think Whitney's trying to trying to connect more with Asher here, trying to see why he's acting this way. He's very distant. They find, or Asher tells her that Fernando quit, apparently. Whitney kind of is like concerned about that. It's like she's probably feeling like, oh, that's for the best. And and I think earlier Dougie mentioned how perhaps the HDTV doesn't want the whole relationship between Asher and Whitney to break apart. They kind of like them together. So I think Whitney now is like, okay, well, I guess let me try to fix kind of like this relationship I have with Asher, and maybe we can do something fun for to build a relationship, improve a relationship, and maybe like have some scenes in the show that have us like scenes of us loving each other and like playing around and stuff, and etc. And so they have this little game here where they count down, like, okay, she's counting down from 10 to get Asher to be like, okay, let's go bowling, right? She wants to have a nice little date, basically. And it seems like it's something they've probably done before. It's probably something they've, a little inside joke they have, or something they do. And then, Asher doesn't really answer right away. And then he's like, oh, well, I'm going to play, if you want to play this game, then I'm going to play it my way. How about I ask you, do you love me? Because that's like, Asher's main concern now, right? He wants to live up to Whitney's expectations, and he wants to be a good husband. That's his main goal. But he wants Whitney to love him, because he feels insecure about himself as in that position. He feels like maybe he's out of his league, this whole time. And funny enough, Whitney kind of laughs it off, and she never really says "I love you" back, even during that countdown. Even she's like joking, like, "Oh yeah, let's go bowling." And then I think they get called to set, or they have to get to shoot the next scene. So that's Saved by the Bell situation here, when he doesn't have to even say that. And I guess Asher kind of just like laughs it off, because they're kind of having like a good time here anyways. Like, it's that little fun little game they're having, it lightens the mood a bit, right? And now Asher's kind of back to to being a little bit happier, right? A little bit more, a little bit more certain, or feeling good about his relationship with Whitney at this point, right? Better than before. And so they're redoing that scene because the executive was like, wouldn't it be nice if Asher and Whitney tried out this little comedic scene of Whitney pulling up the pants on Asher because the pants are too tight, right? Tight, skinny jeans. Although I don't think skinny jeans are the fashion now, the trend now. Might be wrong, but it's one of those low-hanging fruit comedy bits that could appeal to a lot of people, I guess. Very, very safe comedy, right? And then they do some scenes of like them eating some cupcakes, or having fun, doing some cutesy, romantic couple things. And then we cut to them actually doing some bowling, and this is off camera, right? This is not them for the cameras, this is them for themselves. So again, kind of blurring the lines of like what's real, what's not, what's performance, what isn't. They both are kind of performing here too in a way. We see Whitney here joking around with Asher. There's some physical comedy. She like kicks him a little bit at a certain point, and Asher does these like these over exaggerated celebration gestures, right? Celebratory gestures. That stupid like X on the crotch gesture there. That I guess he's trying to be cool. That's his personality, right? He's kind of like a nerd in that way, trying to be all masculine, and that extends to the moment, carrying her. It extends to the moment where Bill shows up. And I also this scene they play the song by Rod Stewart, Young Turks it's called, which has the lyrics, "Young hearts be free tonight," that classic 80s song, real feel good song, to illustrate that like they're having a good time here. It's a nice song, familiar nostalgic song. Everything's all great, right? And in that song, it's basically about like two young lovers who run away and try to start a new life, and don't want basically want to set their own road and pave their own road in life, kind of like in a rebellion to their parents and stuff like that, right? And it's called Young Turks, even though it doesn't really mention it in the lyrics, Young Turks. But I guess that's like an allusion to the Young Turk Revolution in the 20th century, which is basically just the revolution against the monarchy in the Ottoman Empire. But it's also used as kind of like a phrase to describe people who are rebellious, right? And so I guess that's the idea of young that basically Asher and Winnie are setting their own course. Thanks for the follow, Jesse Zoe. Welcome in. So it's that idea that like Whitney and Asher are the young hearts here, right? Trying to set their own course apart from Whitney's parents. But again, it's like at what's the expense? What's the consequence here? They're not really. It's for themselves, not so much. Even though they're supposedly doing it for the community, improving the community, it's really all about them, and particularly Whitney, about being the Green Queen, right? The Green Queen of the show, and trying to show that she is this great eco-friendly liberal, right? While Asher is trying to live up to that as much as he can. for the sake of justifying, or for the sake of like feeling like he's adequate enough to be Whitney's partner. And so, so we go here and we have Bill showing up. Bill was the coworker that Asher used to work with at the casino. This is kind of paying off the plot thread of Asher getting that file from Bill's computer to show that like the casino was like basically taking advantage of like gambling addicts, and he wanted to break that story in order to that reporter, so the reporter wouldn't release that interview he had, that where he in the first episode, where basically he like kind of like got really angry and broke down. It just really was a really bad look for the show. So basically, again, Whitney wanted him to like get rid of that interview so it wouldn't air, and then his idea was like, okay, I'll just give them this other story in order for them to not air that interview, and instead do this expose on the gambling addicts at the casino. And so, in a previous scene, Bill here was visibly upset. He wouldn't even talk to Asher because he assumed it was Asher who leaked the information and got the whole casino in trouble. And I guess, Bill felt betrayed. But then apparently it seems that Bill and the casino workers there thought it was someone else who was behind it. So he comes to apologize. He's like, oh yeah, sorry, I thought it was you. But you wouldn't do that, so I'm sorry. And at this point here, Asher realizes that, oh shit, I gotta like stand up for my principles of like being the good guy, the good husband who like calls out the bullshit, calls out the bad things that the casino was doing, these big businesses are doing, etc. I gotta show Whitney that I'm on the right side of history here, right? And so he's like, he actually says, like, he admits that, hey, it's actually, I was the whistleblower, I'm the one who leaked it, which surprises Bill, and he puts on the show, so this is just another little like performance that Asher gives here, trying to display his superiority and his to Whitney, to see like, hey, see, look, there's a reason you married me, right? There's a reason why we're together, because I'm the guy you want me, I'm the kind of guy that you look up to, or that you think is the good example of what it means to be a progressive man in society. And of course, Bill's like kind of set back, and hold on, this video's not really, there we go. And Bill feels betrayed and feels like, oh, like, you're supposed to be loyal to your coworkers. And he even calls him a tool, which is, the funny thing is that Asher like turns that around. It's like, in his awkward comedic, like not actually funny way of dealing with things, he turns it around. It's like, oh yeah, I am a tool, because tools fix things, which is the complete almost opposite of what that phrasing really means, right? That the idea is that he's telling him that like, you're a tool because you let people control you. In this case, maybe he's thinking that, he's saying that Whitney's controlling Asher, and Whitney's the one who did in fact influence Asher into doing this leak, right? And so he's saying that as a diss, right? Um, but Asher turns it around, but it's not quite. You can't quite do that. You can't quite. You can't quite repurpose that phrasing for your benefit, right? Or it just doesn't really work, and it's kind of an awkward little comedic moment. So it's like one of those funny moments that this show is known for, right? And then Bill, gives him the finger. And for a moment there, you think maybe Asher is going to blow up and maybe get angry as he's done before, but perhaps maybe it's an indication that he's grown a little bit, and he's not gonna impulsively blow up here and go on a little rant and rage at Bill here. He decides to just move forward and let it go, right? And so now we're back. Now we're at the dinner scene. Which with the HDTV executive, Dougie, getting to know each other, really like trying to, get on the network's good side, pretty much is what they're trying to do here, right? Like, yeah. And it seems that, the executive is like enjoying the show. And it's like she's like thinking it's going great, and Whitney feels vindicated and is responding well to the compliments, of course. But then the executive kind of makes clear like what she really wants the show to be, and she says she does appreciate the holistic approach you're giving to the whole situation. But when he kind of pushes a little further, he's like, you know what? If you said you like that it's a holistic approach, but maybe we should focus more on the community, and perhaps I think she's suggesting even perhaps in the future, spreading this idea to other communities, maybe continuing the show and not just Española and other places, and we can talk more about how how we can improve the world of these homes beyond Española, talk more about the environmental impact, but also talk about the colonization and how and address how we're building on these indigenous lands, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, the HDTV executive is saying howdy Jesse, how's it going? I'm doing great. So basically the HD executive is basically trying to say that that no, she doesn't want to get too deep in the weeds here. She the audience doesn't want to like, just kind of wants to see more, is more interested in the house itself. And she mentions how like they had the show previously with these sisters who were putting solar panels on houses, and how the viewers didn't really like how it basically just made the houses look ugly, and was more interested in the interior, and making a good looking house, and just the aesthetics of the housekeeping, etc., of the set design, etc., of just showing them something they can aspire to, right? And not making the viewers feel bad that their houses aren't green enough, or that they're not doing enough for the environment and stuff. They don't want to challenge the viewers too much. Which is what you see in those type of shows, right? Typical reality shows or home improvement shows are more about like, as we see, more about like making the viewers feel comfortable, and just and not having them think too much about their impact, the people's who are watching, their impact of the world, in the world, or stuff like that, right? They just want to see like pretty houses, and maybe inspire them to like improve their own house, whether it's maybe buying new furniture, or buying or renovating, etc., or or living vicariously through these people when they see on TV. They don't want to be like confronted with the idea that like, oh, you're polluting the environment, et cetera, or you're occupying indigenous lands, and et cetera, et cetera. And so, she's saying like, oh, we should just focus on one thing right now. She's saying how if you really want your message to be heard, just focus on one thing, which is basically the Española, how the houses in Española, the eco-friendly houses, and it's not broaden the scope too much, beyond that. And it's not, and later on we see that they want to cut off some of the more political stuff from the show when they go see the when they go see the episode in the hotel room later. And then here, even like we start to see more of Whitney kind of pushing Asher away again. He puts his hand on her shoulder at some point. She pushes it away. But Asher's trying to play up his role here. The executive's like, oh, we like that the queen has her gesture, right? And maybe earlier on, Asher would have perhaps scoffed at that, of the idea of him not being the king, but being a jokester type of character, right? But then again, he also kind of wants to be seen as the funny guy, right? That's another insecurity he has. And so she does like the idea of them changing the title to Green Queen, which makes Whitney feel good because she has that narcissism in her. And so in general, it seems that that dinner scene went well, and they understand that like maybe Whitney's gonna have to compromise a little bit more in regards to like the messaging she wants to give out in her show, the messaging of the eco-friendly messaging, and maybe tone down any commentary regarding the community of Española. And now here we get an interesting scene. Whitney's back at home, and it seems that Asher's like in the bathroom or somewhere where he feels like he's having a private moment, right? And it looks like he's kind of like rehearsing, regurgitating, wanting like what he was saying to Bill, and like fantasizing what he would want to say to Bill in the future, maybe. They kind of making himself out to be the tough guy again, like, oh yeah, like basically saying that I'm the whistleblower and you wish you were with my wife, etc., etc. She's hot. And basically his fantasy comes to light here, that he wants to see someone have sex with his wife. And Winnie, of course, is a little bit put off by it, right? It's not quite clear exactly what she's feeling right here, but it seems that like she's realizing again, like, oh yeah, I had this good time with Asher, and maybe there was a moment where she felt like, okay, maybe we can make this work. But now again, she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm with this guy, who like, this idea of like having someone, the cuckold idea, the fantasy of having someone else sleep with your spouse while you watch. I guess it could be a legitimate fantasy, but it's also kind of, typically seen as a pathetic fantasy. And also, you can see it as also kind of objectifying your wife, right? It's more like you're seeing your wife as a trophy, that you can show off, and um, even like have your wife as someone as a spouse to show off, but also to like be used by other men, you know, for your own benefit, your own fantasy, your own desires, disregarding really perhaps what Whitney wants, right? And so if he was more sympathetic or empathetic of his wife, he would at least bring it up and like talk to her about it. But he's still kind of like, of course, ashamed about it, and hides in the bathroom or the closet, wherever he is, you know, rehearsing this idea in his head, talking out loud too, which is really weird, right? Even calls him Bill ugly and stuff with a mustache. But also, it's like, it's the way her expression here is like, you could really does come like kind of like disgust, but also she's like maybe thinking, how can I use this to my advantage? You know, maybe we can use this. I don't know. I'm not sure how she would use it to her advantage, but she's definitely contemplating something here, and maybe it'll come up later. Maybe she'll, you know, 'cause she can definitely bring this up later on. Maybe she'll just bring up, hey, I heard you talk about this in the bathroom. Like, explain this to me, or maybe that's a reason why while she breaks up with him later, she can bring that up later. It's like, why would I want to be with you if you have this sick fantasy of me treating me like an object here, something that can be just used by someone else. So now we have her going to the bookend apartments, the apartments that her parents manage and own. She runs into it, you know, it seems like she's been here before, often, you know, in the past. So she is familiar with the grounds. This could be a groundskeeper, a handyman. He's got like keys, a janitor type. And definitely recognizes Whitney. They seem to be friendly, as they haven't seen each other in a while apparently, but they know each other. So that just indicates that Whitney has a connection here. You know, she's not as distant from this place as she likes to portray. She likes to say that she has nothing to do with her parents, you know, work but in fact, it seems that she does, at least has somewhat. And of course, you saw that picture earlier of her at the opening of the apartments. Here, she's asking for her dad, because it seems that her dad is living here now for a little bit, because as she points out later, a lawyer has said that it's good if he lives here for a bit. And I guess you can interpret that as being like, it's just good publicity for a landlord to live in the same unit they rent out, to show that like to show the world like, oh, see, it's not that bad, even though the news is saying that they are slumlords and that it's horrible living environments. You know, he can say like, hey, I've lived there, you know, it's not that bad, you know. Also, there's different laws from what I've read that like it's easier to evict some tenants if you move in and live there. You can more quickly put it up for rent again. Like, you evict someone, then you go in and move there as a landlord, and you live there, and then it's easier to like flip it and have someone else move in quicker, something like that. I'm not like an expert on those things. That's what I read. So there's different ways reasons why he would want to live in here, and the lawyer would suggest him to live at the apartments, and she says like 6 days, so it's not even that long. And he even says like, oh yeah, I'm getting to know the people, you know. he's making it out to be a good, selfless thing he's doing. And so she brings up the guy Whittaker, what's his name? The uncle of Phoebe who got evicted. And he's like, where did I recognize that name? And Macintosh, right? Macintosh. And the mother's like, oh yeah, that's the Ripper, right? So they have a name for this guy who apparently comes in, rips out all the appliances and sells them. And so he's like a bad tenant, supposedly. And the father has these pictures, so it's one of those things where there's two sides of the story, like what exactly, how bad is this tenant, is it, when he questions it, is it, does it justify him being evicted and sent on the streets, while the parents are like, yeah, of course, he's just going to repeat the same thing. If we let him back in, he's just going to ruin the place and take advantage of us and sell the appliances, and we're gonna have to, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I think what this goes to show is more like just the societal structural problem in general of having these subsidized housings still being privately owned for a large part and run. Perhaps it'd be better if these apartments could be better improved if perhaps the government could divest more funds into it, instead of having it be privately owned. Maybe it could be more of a public thing, where instead of perhaps Congress giving more money to the military industrial complex, we can divest that money into housing. Perhaps there's better ways to improve the living conditions of people who usually have to come here, right? We have no other places to go. Whether it's working class people or impoverished people. So of course, obviously this is a horrible place to live. There's like roaches around everywhere. So the father's just like capturing one in the glass cup here. But yeah, sometimes certain places, even like places that aren't like public housing, have roach problems, and it's pretty shitty. But I guess it just indicates that like they're not really taking care of the people enough, and to the point where there is that roach problem, and as we saw outside, it's not like the best well kept place. When he's walking in, it doesn't seem they have limited funding apparently, but they know they have a nice house and everything. Of course they could certainly do more, but yeah, it's more, I think we can go more deep into it, but I think this scene just more illustrates the structural problem of just how subsidized housing exists today in the US. And it puts a burden on these private owners versus perhaps maybe making it more of a public utility situation where the community and the government as a whole has more responsibility. So basically she's coming in to criticize them, and and the parents, of course, the dad's like, oh, like you're you're basically, we're paying for your lifestyle anyways, and so you're still like, in a way, she's still complicit in this, because if she wanted to help out, she would work for them and improve the living conditions here, and and decide who to evict or who not to evict. And and she says, and the mother even brings up the idea that, like, oh, like, what do you think? Where do you think they go? The people who you displace when you build your nice eco-friendly homes, they come here in places like this. And when he tries to defend herself and say, like, no, they're taken care of, we send them other places, and she even, earlier in the episode, she mentioned, like, oh, she's never evicted anybody in her life. And which is a lie, because as we've seen before, and even in that little promo video on YouTube that Nathan Fielder has, where it shows like a scene from the supposed pilot of the Philanthropy show, they have to evict the people who lived in the houses before they can build these new passive homes, right? So we see that some of those residents, and even I think in our episode 1 we saw them like relocating the residents and like paying for their rent, like subsidizing their rent, for a few months, and she doesn't call that eviction. She doesn't like see it as a bad thing, but she's essentially still displacing people, and it's not like we don't see exactly every person she's displaced with her passive homes. And you can easily imagine that a lot of them will have to end up moving to one of these subsidized housings facility or apartments here, and perhaps we will see one of them here at some point. Maybe, I mean, we have one episode left after this, maybe not, but so in a way, she's not too different from her parents. She just has like her image. She's just trying to curate her image to be a little bit more friendly and environmentally friendly. She's just more. She pays more attention to how she's perceived than her parents are. And then the mother kind of criticizes Whitney for kind of like for that idea that she's kind of like putting on this facade of being this friendly, eco-friendly liberal, right? And then she like even points to her wearing this necklace. She's saying that like she should stop playing dress up, basically. Kind of also mostly implying, also referencing that her conversion to Judaism, which she, as we saw, I think in the first episode or two, they had that dinner with them during the Sabbath, I think it was, and because Asher's character is Jewish, right? So apparently Whitney converted to Judaism for Asher. She has a Star of David necklace, and and the mother feels like she's just doing that, as a dress-up game, and she doesn't really is not authentic. Whitney defends it. She's like, oh well, of course I'm doing this. I needed something to believe in, because you raised me, and she was raised in a family that didn't have any religion or any belief system. So in a way that she's kind of rebelling against that and trying out Judaism, right? For Asher, I guess. But really, I think to more of a rebellious instinct against her parents. And then the father mentions something which is interesting. He mentions that, well, when Yogi Bahan tries to fuck your wife, you lose faith in religion, right? So Yogi Bahan is was like a spiritual teacher, like several decades ago, I guess, who was accused after his death of sexual abuse. Um, so one of those cult like type of leaders, right? And I guess he introduced different yoga methods or something, the Kundalini yoga method here in the U.S. But yeah, he did some bad things, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, all that, and it seems that the mother here was involved in that. You know, she doesn't think it's funny, but it does connect to the yogis we see in a few episodes ago, right? When he stumbled into some kind of religious ceremony. Not sure if it was Sikh, if it was like some kind of yoga situation, in Española. So there seems to be something related to this yogi in Española that, and there could be some some abuse happening there as well. We do see also in another episode she drives by some protesters who were protesting a fraudulent yogi. So it could be referring to that group that she stumbled into. And then we also see at the art party she runs into a guy from that same group. She flirts with him, and he makes a joke about the grapes. He mentions, it seems like he says rape, but then he says, "You want some grapes?" So, so that all connects this. So I feel like in the next episode we probably will be seeing more of that. Maybe it's just some extra flavoring and spice to the series of having this yoga and this appropriation of yoga in the background, to add some flavor text to just the appropriation that's going on in general, whether it's the indigenous people's art that they're appropriating or not, or whatever, in Española for the series, etc. But I don't know. It could lead to something later on. And now we go to Whitney trying to relax. Perhaps she's feeling tense after the confrontation with her parents. She wants to just chill and have a massage, right? And what do you know? She bumps into Kara here. Surprise! It's Kara, her friend, the artist. And basically, this scene is her being confronted face on with the reality that there's a class divide between her and Kara. And she considered her a friend, even though she like kind of bought her as a friend by paying her to be a consultant and paying for her art to be in the show, etc. Without that money, without that, Kara would probably never like even hang out with her or whatever, right? Or associate with her much. And Kara's like, "Oh yeah, I had to come back and work here because I'm figuring some things out." So as a working class person, she's in need of some money and has to like go back and do this service job here, right? As a masseuse, which Whitney never even considered that she would do, right? She probably was thinking like, "Oh, Kara's an artist. She's just gonna do her art for a living, and that's all she's gonna have to do." Like me, like I'm an artist too. I don't have to massage people. I don't have to do service work. And then at this moment, she's like, "Oh well, yeah, sure. Let's you can massage me. I'd rather have you than a stranger." And then Kara's like, like it's her job. She's like, sure, I'll do it, whatever. She's kind of probably used to this idea of like these wealthy people, coming by and misusing them, even if they're friends or not, right? And then um, Whitney kind of thinks twice, like, oh, wait a second, this feels awkward. She's confronted with with the idea of like, oh, this friend like you're paying a friend to massage you because you're the wealthy person while she has to struggle to get by, right? And she's starting to feel uncomfortable with that, and she's like, you know what, let's not do it. And she steps away, and of course she has to still pay because the cancellation, she has the 24 hours to cancel it, and she wasn't able to, so of course she has to pay. And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever, it's not a big deal for her because she has the money. And she tips 350, which isn't a lot, but the clerk's like, yeah, well, I think that's generous. um so just shows that like it's like an insignificant, uh it's an inconvenience for Whitney, you know but it's Kara's life that she's that she's witnessing here. Like, oh, Kara has to actually stay and work here while she can just get the massage and walk away and pay for one that she doesn't even get. It's not a big deal for her. Again, just like illustrating the class divide there. And Whitney, I think, maybe has to contemplate that, but she can walk away and forget about it, and now she's just exercising at home. Like, I don't think she's really gonna dwell on it too much, right? She has that privilege to do so. And then we have Asher here wondering about the new contract, which Dougie did mention early on to Whitney that they had to sign a new contract. There's a new clause in which the network basically wants to sign that says that they're okay with them being portrayed in a false light. Basically, they're okay that like perhaps what they're going to be seeing on screen isn't an exact representation, and they can't basically sue them for defamation or et cetera, et cetera. Liable, etc. And then Whitney doesn't seem concerned about it, and she's basically kind of passive aggressively being like, "Oh, well, if you don't want to be, we can just not make the show. Then don't sign it. We won't do the show." And she's probably still, kind of getting out her anxiety and anger from the situation in general, of like of the compromises she's gonna have to do for the show, and then her parents' involvement, with her life and etc. and like all that. Maybe she's still like stressed out about the care situation, so she's like trying to kind of get all that toxicity out of her mind by exercising. And she's a bit annoyed here with Asher coming in with this. Asher feels maybe like a little down point now. Okay, now we're back to kind of the normal situation with me and Whitney, where basically there's ebbs and flows. They were having a good time at the bowling alley, and now they're back to like kind of like at each other's throats a little bit. And here we have the most pivotal scene of the episode, and perhaps where the whole series hinges on, what the whole series was leading up to in a way. We see the rough cut of the philanthropy episode, right? Which I guess is now called the Green Queen. And we've seen a little bits, pieces of this and that earlier on, but now we get a more clear view of what it's going to look like. and it seems like well produced, like a well produced show you would see on HDTV. Dougie mentions that they're gonna probably cut some stuff out. He says they're gonna cut out the dinosaur bit, which I think was referring to this meteorite, where basically, Whitney's going on about the environmental impact and how we need these homes, or else we may go extinct like the dinosaurs. So of course, the network probably thinks that's a little bit too much. Let's not go into talk about extinction. Let's focus on the housing, on the houses. So it's retitled Green Queen. There's a temporary voiceover of some dude saying, "I'm the Green Queen," which you would later on Whitney would do the voiceover to put in there. Just kind of like an inside look of like what what it looks like to produce and edit shows, behind the scenes look there. And then we have a scene here of Asher displaying his comedic wit. Kind of the idea that he's actually not that funny, right? And when he kind of pokes fun of him, she's like asking him, she's talking about the house on Palmer Lane, and she's wondering if people will like it. And he's like, "Oh yeah, people like Palmer's, as in Arnold Palmer, the drink, the tea and lemonade drink, iced tea lemonade drink." And then they mention about the comedy classes. Asher is kind of like, "Oh, I don't know if we need to have that in there because then people will think I'm not funny." But then, Dougie's like, "Oh well, it makes you more relatable, and like I think it's fun. We should keep it in there. It makes you look better. Shows that you care," he says. And I guess Asher's like, "Yeah, sure." And then just more of the show. We have them coming in to a new building site, new construction site for a new house. This is apparently their Whitney's favorite house, which is basically the most advanced one, I guess. And it looks pretty cool, right? Look at that. There's no lawn, no need for irrigation of the lawn, no wasted water. The outside walls, that the mirrors actually have this a new pattern on it. Makes it look more interesting, more like part of the environment. And then, of course, before they start building, they have to do a special prayer, a blessing, because they have to acknowledge that they're on colonized land, right? They bring in the governor here, Gary Farmer. He's great, from Reservation Dogs. Might recognize him from there. We see him again here as the governor. And so basically, she's saying that like, oh, we have to acknowledge that we're on colonized land, and it's ironic because while it's good to acknowledge it, they're kind of like they're not acknowledging the fact that they had to displace people, they had to evict people in order to build this house here, right? So it's kind of just like a showy little performance they're putting on here to make themselves look like the good guys, right? Like, oh yeah, we're making this fancy home, but at least we're pointing out the reality that this used to be indigenous land, but not really acknowledging that they're building these houses for these rich people while evicting the poor people and having them have to rent out places somewhere else. So in a way, like, they're kind of continuing the colonization. Just acknowledging the fact doesn't really exempt you from the reality of what you're doing, what they're doing. And Dougie's like pointing out like, oh, like we're probably gonna cut out some of the stuff that the governor says here about, like, the governor's like, oh, like, thanks for saying these things, and like, it's important for us to talk about it, and how the government's trespassing, and how he wants some compensation for them using, the roads and the land in the area, which belongs to them, really, the tribal lands, which are south of Española. But when he's trying to, like, reassure the viewers and the homeowners that, that doesn't apply to us, we're not, the roads leading up to the house and etc. are not part of that easement process. You're not gonna have to pay for that. You don't have to pay to use the roads here, etc., through taxes, etc. So he's kind of downplaying that, and then Dougie mentions that the network doesn't want to even include much of that, so they're probably going to cut a lot of that out. They want to focus again on the good, happy feelings of the eco-friendly house, and not so much on the politics of colonizing indigenous land. And here, Whitney, I guess, is now, like, in her head, kind of anticipating the scenes in which she's kind of talking bad about the marriage, right? And then Dougie's saying that he says that they cut it out, but when he's insisting that they show it, Oh, and by the way, Asher here is kind of, like, again, putting on the performance of like living up to Whitney's expectations, and it's like, oh yeah, this is important that we keep this political stuff in it because it's important to us. You can talk about the edits, etc., etc. So he's saying that we cut that out, and that we don't need to see the scene of Whitney talking about the relationship. And it seems, in a way, it feels like Whitney's kind of like self-sabotaging her relationship, right? By insisting that they show the scenes in which she's talking about the downfalls of the marriage, and how perhaps she doesn't want to be in this marriage anymore. And because I think she can't quite bring herself to directly, talk about it with Asher, she kind of rather have the show do it for her, right? And that shows kind of her reluctance and her insecurities there, and her inability to really open up to Asher in that way. She can make fun of him and mock him, as we've seen, in previous episodes, but she's not quite ready or willing to go deep into her fears for the relationship, and her anxiety of being with him, and what she feels is wrong with the relationship, and how she's perhaps no longer in love with him, right? Or wanting something fresh and new and different. And so Dougie, doesn't want to create more actual drama, which is kind of funny because he was all about that early on, right? Particularly for the show, right? But I think now, I guess he's at a point now where he just wants to get the show made for HDTV. He doesn't want to ruffle feathers too much anymore. Maybe behind the scenes he's trying to work on something. Maybe he's trying to gonna use that interview footage for something else. Although legally he won't be able to, because it's, like, owned by HGTV. I don't know, but on face value right now, it seems like he's caving to the network, and he doesn't want to ruffle feathers, right? But Whitney insists, and he shows the scene. And so basically, we saw a little bit of this. The whole idea here is that Asher doesn't respect the pottery. He uses his he has a cell phone in his hand as he picks up the pottery, and that upsets Whitney. And she starts talking about how it's this relationship isn't really what she wants it to be, and it's not really working out, and maybe she needs something new and different. We have a nice little picture of them here. She's like, it makes me question if Asher is the man I married. Starting to question things. And I guess this also kind of plays into the theme of the show, the idea of performance, right? When you marry someone, when you start a relationship, to what extent are they performing? And then once you live with them or get to know them better over the years, who they really are comes out more. And then at that point, are you still compatible? So when he's trying to express that, right? But she's also kind of a bit confused about it, because she does see that Asher really likes her and really is in love with her and worships her, right? And you would think that'd be great, right? But perhaps she feels like that's a little bit overbearing, and she doesn't feel probably the same way. And here we have basically scenes that we saw earlier in last week's episode from a different angle, right? Which is interesting to see the difference here. In the previous episode, Dougie was prodding at Asher, was trying to, get him to say spicy things, exactly what kind of he wanted to say. He wanted him to say things to create some drama for the show, how he feels about Whitney and what he would do if she wasn't there anymore. If could he live without her? And it was making him uncomfortable, and we saw that last week, but seeing it now here from a different perspective, it feels different, right? It kind of he doesn't seem that uncomfortable. It feels more heartwarming here with the lighting, just the camera angle, and it just kind of shows the difference it makes when you edit, and just kind of I guess again it shows demonstrating how you can manipulate through the camera, through editing, you can manipulate reality, to create a narrative. And so I do like how they're showing it as if with the full screen here. It's not like a super wide screen. It's really well lit, like you would see in TV, right? Compared to last week when we saw it, or just in general when we see how it's shot when they're sitting on the bed here. It's grainier. It's a wide screen. Just to differentiate, okay, so this is the reality of the show versus the TV show. It's a really strong contrast, which I think is very effective to illustrate the difference there, right? What's reality, what's not. But at the same time, we do have voyeuristic camera angles when they're not showing the TV show within the show. So it's a blend of all that, because also within reality they're also performing, right? So what's real, what's not. That's just the basic theme of the show, which is real interesting here, right? And so and I looked back at this scene too from the previous episode, and it does seem like they're using the same take. So it's kind of fascinating to see how different it reads, but depending on the angle you show, and the lighting and all, as I said. So again, she's questioning it. Asher here is really into Whitney. She compliments her. She's the universe, etc. And then so he asks that. This scene, though, I think this one was a different take than what we saw last week's episode. But I don't think it's that significant. It still feels like the same thing, because if you were to compare the scene from last week's episode, Dougie does say more. He says, what would your life be without her? And then he adds some other things. He says a few other things before Asher responds, right? But this also could be just part of the editing process, an illumination of how editing works. To make it look like Asher responded right away, because in reality it took him Dougie said a couple more things, and then Asher took a beat or two before he responded that he wouldn't be anything without her. What would your life be like without her? So we continue. It makes Asher look out to be like an oblivious husband who really loves his wife but isn't, while the wife is contemplating breaking up, contemplating something new and different. Like you would see in a drama film or something, right? And then we have the scenes here of that pretend party. Turned out well, right? Really looks like Whitney has some cool friends, right? Look at all these cool friends she has. Of course, it still kind of looks inauthentic. Here again, this is kind of similar to how Dougie was kind of coaching Asher to say the things he wanted. Here we have the same moment, a similar moment where Whitney is asking Kara to say things. So in the previous episode, she was like, "Okay, say this. Say that you like my art. Say why you like to have your art in my house, etc., etc." And even though Kara had some insightful things to say about her art piece too, about how she's being used by white people in general, by society, people take from indigenous people and without really considering them. She explained that her art piece to Whitney, but that was cut out, right? It's just basically her saying, "Oh yeah, your art is interesting and it's important." And even have a little scene here with her and the guy she flirts with. I thought for a second they would show her going into that bathroom, but they didn't go that far. That maybe it would have been a little bit too far to show her flirting with him and going to the bathroom off screen. That might have really upset Asher more, right? It ends with typical, drama music here, just reality TV music of oh yeah, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna break up? Dun dun dun. And throughout that, Asher was grinding his teeth and oh geez, you could tell it really got to him, right? And Whitney was kind of almost disassociative or disassociating and not really saying anything at all, right? You can see in her face she's stressed out, and anxious about what Asher's gonna do, you know. But you know, in her head, she kind of, you know, she wanted to do this in order to hopefully, you'd imagine, to break up with Asher without having to do it her, you know, face to face herself, but instead letting the TV show do it for her. And you know, so the Asher storms out. Obviously, he's angry. It really makes him look like a dumbass or a fool in this relationship. And you know, who wouldn't be upset? Dougie's like, "Oh, you're happy now? Is that what you wanted?" It's an intense moment. Hold on, I'm gonna get some water. Hold up. Yeah, it's an intense moment where this whole series has been leading up to, right? Their relationship, like, this is the breaking point. You know, you think this is it, this is the end, but then he comes back in and he claps. He's like, "That was great," you know. And what really he's feeling is that, you know what, he's glad that she did this and reveal this to him, and that because now he acknowledges that, yeah, like, I've been a bad husband. I haven't lived up to your standards, and I'm actually been trying to improve and be a better man and be a better husband. And this is the point. This is the moment. This is where I show you, like, hey, I can be the perfect husband for you. I can be the one. And basically, he's like breaking down here. He's like, this is his last hurrah. This is where he has to, like, you know, let it all out, all his emotions out, and really show Whitney, like, he can sacrifice. He can sacrifice. He can do whatever she wants. You know, he tells her, like, hey, like, I'm a liar. You're right. I'm a doofus. I lied about giving that money to Nala. I didn't give it to her. But you know, he says that he was a terrible person, and he comes to realization that, like, hey, like, I thought, you know, our relationship was going downhill or whatever because of this curse, but he's realizing that, like, no, that curse doesn't exist. That superstition. It's his fault. He's the one who's the bad person in the relationship, and he's the reason why things aren't going right in their marriage. And now that he realizes that, he's gonna put a stop to it, and he's gonna improve and be the better person, and fix the marriage. You know, he's gonna be that tool. He said earlier, he's gonna be a tool for fixing. Yeah, so basically he's getting on his knees almost, pretty much, and begging her that, hey, I'll be what you want. I'll do it. You know, he doesn't even, you know, and he even like says that, like, he knows her so well that, like, that if she really wanted to break up, he would know. She wouldn't have to say anything. Like, he knows her so well that if she wanted to break up with him and didn't want to be with him anymore, he would just go away and disappear and leave. Like, that's how connected he is with her at this moment, you know. So it's kind of like a blubbering, like, pathetic, you know, last moment of desperate cry for help here, almost, that Asher's displaying here. And you know, he says that, you know, even you said that we were good on paper, and he brings up that he says, like, paper covers rock, and I guess he's the paper and she's the rock. He's like gonna protect her as the paper. something like that. Um, and Whitney here is like, there's we could read her expression in different ways. There's certainly a moment here where she's like, oh shit, like he's actually more devoted than I thought. Maybe he is the right guy for me. Maybe we can make this work. So I think there's some of that in there. But then, especially later on, I feel like there's a moment where she's like, wait a minute, this is too much. This is too cringe. And then she may feel like, am I stuck with this guy now? Like, is he not gonna like let go? Like, no matter, she's like, she says like, you still want to be with me after that? Like, she's like kind of perplexed by that, and then so she's like, oh, she's thinking, is she stuck with him? Like, is he never gonna stop loving me? Like, no matter what I do, does she think she has to do something even more extreme? Does she actually have to like cheat on him, do something, uh, embarrass him to a greater extent? Like, what does she have to do to get rid of him? Is that what she's thinking? Very interesting performance there. I think Nathan Fielder's performance is a little awkward here, and is a little maybe too dramatic, but it kind of works for his character. Like, that's kind of like what Asher would do, I guess. Like, so it still kind of works, and I think it's an unconventional performance, so it feels a little off. But Asher and Nathan are unconventional people, so it kind of works. But I think what really completes it is Emma's reaction here, her performance here. It really elevates this whole scene. And then Dougie, of course, he's like in the background there, having to listen to all this, and I'm sure he's thinking like, he's probably doesn't think this is a good thing. He probably thinks this is kind of pathetic. But he does say, that's beautiful, really beautiful. It's, kind of like a warped echo of what we saw previously of Whitney's, responding to Kara and her friend when they're kind of like revealing some truth there, when Kara's revealing her truth. But her art piece, and when you can't quite respond because she doesn't want to like call herself out as being a fool. She's kind of just, oh yeah, that's beautiful, doesn't want to like call herself out as being as appropriating indigenous culture, or as like taking advantage of indigenous people and her indigenous friends. She can't quite say anything, so she says instead, that's beautiful. And then Dougie here is like, in a similar way, like, can't quite maybe express what he truly feels inside about this whole situation, so instead he just shorthand, that's beautiful. And that's the end of that episode. We ended on Whitney's perplexed, confused, horrified expression, and it really stuck with me, man. That scene really sticks with you. So definitely an effective episode. And what's gonna happen next? Where's Whitney? Where are Whitney and Asher going from here? That's yet to be seen. Are they gonna? Is Whitney gonna like go all in with Asher and succumb to Asher's pleading here? Maybe for the benefit of the show, she will. to please the HDTV executives. In a way, she's going to perform in real life, perhaps staying with Asher, for the sake of perform, as well as performing in the show for the sake of the show and her career, you know. Which plays in again into the theme of it, of the series so far. What's performance? What's reality? Or we're always kind of performing. I'm performing myself as I'm, discussing this show right now. But within those performances, there's always some truth. There's always truth to it. What truth there is, we've got to, that's kind of the viewers for the viewers to interpret. We'll see. It seems that the curse itself, Asher feels that he was the curse. Is the there's different types of curses we can perceive in the show. The curse of wanting to be validated in your actions, whether it's Whitney trying to feel like she's doing good for the world. She doesn't want to be considered at the same type of person that her parents are. The curse of colonization, the curse of these wealthy white people coming in and sucking dry the community for their own benefit. It's like, there are different ways you can interpret this curse. Will we see perhaps Dougie in another alcoholic incident? He seems to have been trying to prove to himself and to everybody that it wasn't his fault that that his wife died in the car accident. He's trying to prove that, oh look, I can drink, I can drive and be safe, and it wasn't, it was because of the other driver that my wife died. It wasn't because of me. How will the end product, the HDTV show, turn out? It seems that they're gonna cater to what the network wants. Is there somebody behind the scenes, a third party, following Whitney and Asher and Dougie and whatever, and are they doing an investigative report on the community or something? Is there a community member, spying in, doing their own TV show, their own documentary? That's a possibility. We definitely saw hints of that in the beginning of this episode. Could be, but we will see. But yeah, that's episode 9, Young Hearts, it's called. Referencing the Rod Stewart song, Young Hearts Be Free Tonight. Next week, the finale. Stay tuned. But yeah, and yeah, I appreciate everybody who's stuck by, whether you're watching live or watching the video on YouTube. If you want, you can join in. I'll be here next week on Friday, the day after the finale. Streams on Showtime. We'll do another live breakdown at twitch.tv/moonbath, or you can just wait for the YouTube. But yeah, see ya next week. Bye bye.